What's up, everybody? Today, we're going to go over what I mean when I say you are a wave of potential waiting to be realized. In order to fully explain this, let me first tell you what got me into my goal of combining science and religion and explaining it through philosophy and life experiences. You see, I came from a religious background in Christianity and began my studies at a very early age on religion. And as I got deeper into learning about more religions and the connection between them, I found out that science was a major backbone and biology, as well as the fundamental nature of reality. So, this was an underlying question and source of energy and answers that needed to be understood by the highest of the high in the spiritual world or even the elite world throughout the history. And as I got into this, I realized that we are much further along than we knew and have always been through oral language and through theoretical physics and just philosophy in general. This is where it all starts. And when people think, other people experience, express, and learn. So we all build off of each other's information and knowledge. And it goes back to why and how quantum mechanics started. So everyone knows about the standard model that basically explains to us about the larger objects of nature and how a ball rolls with its velocity and mass, its trajectory. We can tell where it's going to go, things of this nature. But when we found out that there was subatomic particles, the elementary particles inside of an atom, which is the building blocks of all matter in the universe, then things got very interesting because we could not find out where an electron was going to be headed, and it seemed to behave in weird ways. There was the original double slit experiment where a guy in a dark room placed a board over the window with a pinpoint hole, and light came through the window in a beam of light. He then put another board with another hole so another beam of light can get through. And when it hit the back of the wall, well, he had two slits. I'm imagining he had two. When the light hit the back of the wall, it showed shadows of bars rather than one straight black bar or one line. So, and he can see in the air waves. So he realized the light acted like waves rather than a particle. And later, when we could study particles, this was in early 1800s, 1801, I believe. When we can study larger particles, or I mean smaller particles like electrons and actual photons, then that's when things became more interesting because we realized that it was still acting like a wave, and it actually collapsed once it was being observed. So the measurement on the back wall is the first. Let me explain it to you this way. I got a little written down example here. So you have the beam of light coming over here, and originally it hits the back of the wall, and it would be a dot. Or when they first started it, they shot several beams, and there was several dots. And of course, there's nothing interesting about that. Whenever you put interference, which is two, which is a plate with two slits in it, and the photons are allowed to hit anywhere, and some will go through that slit and hit the back of the wall. As it was going through, it's not hitting two lines in the back of the wall like it should from if you're shooting straight through a slit. It was making waves. So it would have several lines. This meant that as it was coming through the slit, it was interacting with itself, creating ripples, which would create the wave. Very interesting, very cool. Water acts like a wave. Now, particles and light begins to act like a wave. They could not understand it, so they put second interference, which was the observer. That's when the observer effect came in. And they basically put a detector here so they could see which particle. Well, it's let me back up because they decided to shoot one particle at a time instead of shooting a bunch of particles through. And that one particle, after they shot it several times, one after another, it acted with waves. So it didn't hit behind one line or the other either. It made waves. Okay. So even one particle can interact with itself somehow. Then it gets more interesting because as they put the detector here, can detect the particle going through the slit so they can see which slit it's going through, it collapsed and it showed where it was. Then it hit the back of the wall in a straight line every time. It never made a wave anymore. So they could not understand how the whenever you observe it, the detection of it changes its trajectory or it changes it makes it decide where it's going to be, and then you have to, once you decide where it's going to be, you have to decide where you're going to go. Okay, this is what they call a wave of potential superposition in quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is the most reliable form of science we have at the moment, and it's making all sorts of breakthroughs in technology. Be on the lookout for that. But this is what happens, the way I look at it, because when a particle is broken down, it is so small that the waves are larger. That's why it's acting as a potential. And when you are so small, there is no time. Okay, so there the time is basically erased in this equation. But as you become larger, that's when time actually starts to be created as an illusion in order to realize, in order to collapse a full, you know, object, if you will. But all of our atoms in our body or the electrical particles are constantly in movement. That's one thing that we need to know. But basically, this is our past, present, and future. And the way I look at it as if you are being the first interference for life would be the birth or life itself, just looking at life and trying to get a grasp of it. The second interference, which is the observer, would be another human being or an interaction. There is the interactions here creates the ripple effect. Um, so this is all has to do with our emotions. Okay, we're gonna break it down. Okay, so if we look at this on the principle of what's on the inside is also on the outside, what's in the micro is also in the macro, then you become this photon or electron, this particle going through a single slit, or in this case, it could be a door. Think of it as going through one door or the other. Before someone looks at you or you look at yourself, and the way I put it, you have the ability to go through any door. And with time, you have actually gone through every door. And I say this when it comes to what could happen, will happen, and has happened. So, throughout the last 13 billion years, the information that is accumulated throughout history is also within your DNA and your memory. So we'll talk about this a little bit later and how to access this memory, but know that this is why you are in a state of superposition until you decide to tell yourself and to realize your full potential. So the interference pattern is emotions itself being raised in your environment. The interactions and the observers could be different people in your life that you look up to, especially your parents, especially your boss, especially your teachers, your government. And these all have an effect on the future, which is the detector, where you're going to end up. You have lots of potential. And if you cannot see this, or if you don't live in the moment and you're stuck in the past trying to catch up through subconscious programming, DNA reprogramming, then it's going to be difficult because you're going to do the same thing every day without knowing. And when it comes time to realize, it's going to be a little bit late. So go ahead, start your studies now. If you have any questions at all, feel free to let me know. I'll be glad to help and answer anything in the comments. Okay, so a quick side note. You only have the now. That is this moment. You will always and forever be the same when you were a kid, when you were adult, and even after you're gone. There is only interactions. Each interactions is what I call a ripple effect. When you connect all the dots, you will see exactly how you get to where you are and how you are going to be where you're going. This takes lots of observation of yourself, of your past, and a 3D observation of your environment, or a 360 observation, rather. Think about it, guys. You are in charge. You are creating your life. And when you go ahead and accept it, then you're going to be much well off. Love you, and I hope this makes sense. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more enlightening insights.